If you're tuning in, you might be facing something that many of us wrestle with at one point or another: doubt. Maybe you're questioning your faith, wondering if you're truly following God's will for your life, or even feeling uncertain about where you stand. These moments can be tough, but sometimes they make us wonder if we're doing enough or if we've somehow fallen short in our walk with God. And that's okay. I want to remind you that feeling uncertain or questioning your faith doesn't make you any less of a believer. In fact, it's part of the journey, a part of growing deeper. Today, we're going to explore why it's totally normal to feel doubt, how to navigate those moments when they arise, and I'll share some practical steps to help you move forward with faith, even when things feel unclear. Stick around because I've got some great insights coming your way. Welcome to And That's Okay, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of life and remind ourselves that whatever we're feeling, it's for a reason, and that's okay. I'm Lisa Renee Scott, your host and a passionate believer that every feeling matters and every step forward counts. Each week, we'll dive into real-life challenges, share relatable experiences, and offer actionable steps to help you navigate through it all. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that I am not a licensed doctor or therapist. I'm here to share experiences and insights that have worked for me and others like me. Uncertainty and doubt are things we all face at different points. It doesn't matter how long you've been walking in faith. Sometimes questions arise, and the way forward isn't always as clear as you'd like it to be. For me, there have definitely been times in my life when I have questioned my faith. I remember a period where I was making major decisions and I found myself wondering, am I hearing God correctly? Am I making the right choice? My thoughts were flooded with questions. What if I'm not following his plan? Or what if I've misunderstood the direction I should be going in? I have to admit, it didn't feel great when I was going through that. But here's what I learned from it. It is okay to question. It does not mean that you've lost your way or your faith. So a few months back, I had to make a decision whether I was going to actually write the book that is a companion to this podcast. I had to make a decision if I was going to put in the work and learn the learning curve to create this podcast. I feel that both the book and the podcast are led by God. I truly believe that they are gifts from God and a message that I should be sharing with the world. But I had never written a book before. I had never done a podcast before. Although I didn't question where it was coming from, I questioned my own inability or inexperience. And that led to letting doubt creep in. But what I realized was that my doubts didn't disqualify me. They actually encouraged me to lean deeper into my faith and trust God, even without clear answers. Those doubts didn't erase my trust. They helped refine it, and that's okay. Doubt is a normal part of your faith journey. It's natural to wrestle with questions and to wonder if you're on the right path. But the key is not to stay stuck in that place. It's okay to question, but don't let it keep you from moving forward. I have 4 action steps for us today. The first step in navigating doubt is to acknowledge it. When you feel doubt creeping in, it can be tempting to push it aside like it's a weakness. But you might feel like you're not allowed to doubt, especially if you've been walking in faith for a long time. But here's the truth. Doubt is a natural part of being human. When you're feeling uncertain, I encourage you to take a moment and simply admit that you're wrestling with doubt. It's okay to be unsure. In fact, it's the acknowledgement of doubt that opens the door for deeper faith. For instance, when I was struggling with my decision earlier this year, I had to first admit that I was feeling confused and unclear. I said to myself, it's okay that I don't have all the answers right now. One thing I found helpful was writing down my thoughts. I would write about specific doubts I was having and how they were making me feel. This simple act of expressing myself allowed me to process the emotions without judgment. And in that, I felt God's peace start to enter. Acknowledging your doubts isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of willingness to grow. So the action step is, when doubt arises, take a few moments to reflect on what you're truly questioning. Write it down, pray over it, and remind yourself that it's okay to question and that you're not failing. Action step number 2. The second step is to sit in prayer and listen. When we doubt, it's easy to want answers immediately. We want God to show us the next step, but sometimes His answers come not in a rush, but in a quiet stillness. Prayer is not just about talking, it's also about listening. When I was faced with uncertainty, I realized that I wasn't giving God the space to speak to me because I was too focused on pushing through on my own. So I took intentional time to sit in quiet prayer. Instead of rushing to ask for an answer, I just said, God, I trust you. I trust that you'll reveal your way forward in your time. I'm here and I'm listening. I recommend starting with a quiet space. Maybe early in the morning before the day gets busy. Ask God for clarity, but also ask Him for peace in the waiting, and don't rush the process. Waiting on God's timing is an act of faith itself. So the action step is to just set aside a few minutes each day where you can just be still. Instead of asking for answers immediately, focus on being present with God and ask for peace, patience, and clarity, and let God's voice be the one that leads. Next up is to seek counsel from others. Faith isn't a solo journey. In fact, it's often when we share our doubts with others that we find clarity and comfort. When I was given this gift from God and didn't really understand what it was, I talked to my husband consistently. I talked to my girlfriend. I reached out to those who also walked in faith, and I asked them to pray for me, and I shared the questions I was facing. Sometimes just voicing your doubts can help you realize that you're not alone. I encourage you to find someone who can offer godly wisdom. It might be a pastor, a mentor, a trusted friend, a relative who shares your values and who knows how to point you back to Scripture when you're feeling lost. Other people's perspectives can remind you of God's faithfulness and bring clarity to your own thoughts. So the action step is to reach out to someone you trust and who has wisdom in their faith journey. Share your doubts with them. Be open to pray together and let their perspective help guide your own. Action step number 4. One of the most powerful things you can do when faced with doubt is to take one step of faith at a time. When you're uncertain, the temptation is to wait until everything is perfectly clear. But the reality is, you may never have 100% clarity. And that's okay. A step of faith might seem small, but each step builds on the last. And soon you'll find yourself moving forward in the direction God has for you. I remember feeling stuck because I didn't really know how to do a podcast, unsure of what the next move was. And I spoke that to my husband. He reached out to a colleague who got back with us, who now, every week, you're getting a podcast for several months now, right? So in that moment, I was stuck and I was able to reach out in faith and take that faithful step forward. I didn't know if my podcast was actually going to launch. I remember the night that I had it scheduled to launch, and it was like Christmas morning. I couldn't sleep. I have it set for a specific time to actually post. And the moment it was supposed to post, I flung out of bed. I checked all the sites. I made sure, because I'm on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and I checked all the spots, made sure they were all there, and everything was fine. Everything was fine. But I had to take that one step And had I not taken that one step, I'd still be back on that first step. So start small. Maybe it's reaching out for informational interviews, applying for a job, or researching training programs. Whatever it is, taking one step at a time makes the big picture seem less overwhelming. And it keeps you moving in the right direction, even if the path isn't fully clear yet. So the action step is to identify the smallest next step you can take towards resolving your doubt. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it should be a movement toward action, no matter how small. Let me leave you with some encouragement. Doubt is not something to be afraid of. It doesn't mean your faith is failing. In fact, doubt is in the soil in which your faith is tested and grown. Think of it like a muscle. It gets stronger when it's stretched. When you're in the middle of uncertainty, it might feel uncomfortable or even unsettling. But remember, this is where trust is built. God is not afraid of your doubts. He is big enough to handle them, and He is patient with you as you work through them. So don't rush the process. Trust that even in your questions, God is walking with you. So this action step is to embrace the journey. It's okay not to have everything figured out right away. Faith isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about trusting the one who has them. So let's recap the action steps we've covered today. 1 is to acknowledge your doubt and embrace it. Write it down, reflect on it, and remember that it's okay to feel uncertain. 2 is to sit in prayer and listen. Give God space to speak to you and trust in His timing. 3, seek counsel from others. Find someone who can pray with you and offer a perspective rooted in faith. 4, take one step of faith at a time. Even when the full picture isn't clear, move forward with small steps. You can do this, and that's okay. Each step forward, no matter how small, is an act of faith. So trust the process, trust God, and know that doubt is just another opportunity to grow. I hope that these action steps encourage you to keep moving forward, even when you're wrestling with uncertainty or doubt. Remember, you're not alone, and you don't have to have everything figured out right now. God is with you every step of the way. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need a little encouragement today. Thanks for tuning into this episode of And That's Okay. I hope you found our discussion insightful and that you're leaving with some practical steps to apply in your own life. Remember, no matter what you're feeling or going through, you have feelings, and that's okay. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit from today's topic. Until next week, take care, keep moving forward, one feeling, one step at a time.